You know, there's one thing we talked about over the years. It's sexual harassment. We discussed the issue of sexual harassment in the workplace, along with sex in the office. But one of my favorite topics ever to cover was sexual harassment in our schools. In just a few minutes, I'm going to show you a clip of Two and a Half Men as an example. But here's a PSA from a YouTube channel.
Hey, did you see what Rich is running today?
Yeah, so hot.
That's disgusting. You guys know you're sexually harassment, right?
Shut up. I got your sexual harassment right here.
Yeah, I don't care what she said. She's fine.
Hey, what's going on here?
They sexually harassed me.
Really? Come with me, guys. You guys are in a lot of trouble.
That could be you one day. That's why they have classes about this. That's why this common sense needs to be raised. Alright. Now the clip Two and a Half Men. To help explain about an example.
How come you're not in school?
He got sent home for misbehaving.
Oh, it's about time. Hey, when I was your age, I'd already been arrested twice.
Charlie, don't.
No convictions.
I had a really bad day. I had to cancel all my patients and close my office to go pick him up.
Oh, what a drag. Hey, I got some new video games. You want to play with me?
Did you forget you're being punished?
No, why does Uncle Charlie have to suffer?
Go to your room.
You know, in some countries, you're innocent until proven guilty.
You confessed.
Oh, yeah.
And that country you're thinking of is this one, genius.
What did he do?
Something awful.
How awful. These are all multiplayer games.
Apparently, there is a little girl in Jake's class named Barbara Schmidt who is a little more physically developed than the other girls. And Jake decided to make a picture of her and pass it around.
I only passed it to one person. What happened after that was not my responsibility.
Oh, dude. Why'd you sign it?
Okay, that part I regret.
Go back to your room.
Barbara Schmidt. This one on the refrigerator.
Charlie, this is serious.
It really speaks to me.
The girl went home in tears. Her mother is on the warpath, and Jake could get expelled.
For a silly drawing?
It's considered sexual harassment. The school has a zero tolerance policy.
That's what it is. It's a zero tolerance policy. Sorry. Most schools have zero tolerance policies that are put in place to help discipline schools, which is the next issue in our Throwback Thursday. Remember when we talked about zero tolerance policies in our schools? We'll have that for you a bit later. What I want to do is raise some common sense here. You don't make fun of women because they have grown breasts. Like this. You don't ever want to do that. It's considered sexual harassment. Besides all this, a lot of schools are very strict when it comes to stuff like this. Believe me, I was never accused of sexual harassment, and I never will. But believe me, my nephew did something like this, it'd be unspeakable. I would not hang down the fridge. I would talk to him and say, hey, this is very inappropriate. You should never treat women like this. You never should. But in the end, he got suspended. But the thing you gotta remember here is, if you don't know sexual harassment, if you don't know about sexual harassment, you need to take training courses and classes. In workplaces, if you sexually harass a female employee, it can cost you your job. So, I mean, a lot of corporate offices. Workplace is a very serious place to work. Remember the story about the sports sexual harassment case we showed you? That's a great example. A lot of women came forward saying they're being sexually harassed, but the men denied it. They sit there and say, nope, it never happened. It ain't true. And they want to sit there and just blame the victim and say, nah, it's not true. I'm going to blame the victims. It's like the whole Maury incident. We get it. We get it. But you got to remember here, the mouth can lie, but the brain can't. If all those men took lie detector tests, it would come out as conclusive, as deception, or extreme deception indicated. That's what I would do. The victims, I take stand with the victims. That's how it is. Still ahead, zero tolerance policies. And kids in porn. 11-year-old kids were arrested for looking at porn. But first, this man was arrested for growing a plant, a marijuana plant, in his own backyard. You will get to see footage that was shot back in the 1990s of an arrest that was made between him and his wife. And it costed him and sentencing him to a century in prison. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, it is illegal. But who would suggest to him in the first place? The story unlike any you've never seen before. Stay with us. Here's a little something to think about. Is there ever a time when breaking the law would become a medical issue? Think about this. In Oklahoma, you're the victim of smoking pot with a man you're about to meet. And then all of a sudden, you were a victim of this. Think about this. You're a neighbor across the street and you see something happening. An arrest is made. And you as a neighbor would witness this without a video camera. This happened in Oklahoma. Several states where marijuana is illegal. It's against the law to use marijuana. States like California make it legal to smoke marijuana, but with doctors' approval. But is there ever a time when breaking the law would mean ignoring medical attention? You want to hear the full story before you start typing in the comments section. As I showed you before, a couple years ago, or a year ago, it's a story it's unlike that caused outrage throughout Oklahoma. But even after the bombing. Here's Rob Stafford.
My pride. I stood up for what I believe.
But you'll want to hear the full story before you make up your mind. Here's Rob Stafford.
I had my pride. I stood up for what I believed in.
William Foster took a stand and is paying with his life. At age 39, a jury sentenced him to nearly a century in prison for a crime he says had no victims and shouldn't be a crime at all.
I didn't do anything wrong. I had a life. I was productive. I paid taxes. I supported my family.
Had you ever been in trouble before?
No.
Never.
No.
Foster never dreamt he'd become a symbol in a national debate. He's an Army veteran, spent 4 years in the military police. He had his own computer business and a peaceful family life, he says, until the afternoon of December 28, 1995 in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I was in the garden working and I heard a loud bang.
Foster's common-law wife, Meg, was in the hallway.
There was a knock on the front door. Could see the profile of a man. My first initial thought was a utility person.
Meg was wrong. She says before she could open the door,
it explodes in seconds, within 4 seconds. They batter rammed the door in.
Strangers had barged into the Foster home.
They pushed me on the floor. He's got the gun in my face. My daughter's screaming. I had no idea who this was.
It was the Tulsa police. police department running rampant through my house.
It was a drug bust.
They slammed me up against the wall and handcuffed me.
They dragged me from the living room to the den to the master bedroom, wanting to know if I had seen methamphetamines in this house.
Police believe Foster was selling methamphetamines out of his house.
I didn't know what they were talking about.
Have you ever sold drugs to anyone?
No, I have not.
Have you ever sold methamphetamine to anyone?
No, I have not. The police are lying.
Police videotaped the bust, but they found no methamphetamines in the Foster house. They found no large stash of cash, only $28, but they did find something else.
I had a plant. A plant. That's it. It's like declaring war on tomatoes.
Not exactly. Foster wasn't growing tomatoes in his garden. He was growing marijuana.
A plant that can be used as medicine. I looked at it as a medicine.
Foster says he's a sick man, a man with crippling arthritis. He's in constant pain with badly swollen hands and feet.
On your worst day, what was it like?
Oh, sometimes it'd take me 15 minutes to walk across the room. My foot had been so swollen up that, my toes wouldn't even touch the ground.
There were days I knew he was sitting there holding back tears because it hurt.
Prescription drugs didn't help, Foster says. The side effects were unbearable. All he would want to do is sleep.
He would be a completely different person, hateful. He was useless. The business would go down because he was just too tired.
Back in 1990, Will says, his doctor suggested marijuana, and the results changed his life.
He was able to function. He could smoke a joint, still sit down, work the computer, do the books, not be sleepy or irritable all day. It gave him pain management, if not complete alleviation.
While voters in California legalized the medical use of marijuana in 1996, that is not the case in Oklahoma.
It's against the law.
Well, it's against some people's law, yes. If it's the only way that you could get your medicine, then I just didn't see anything wrong with it.
But the state of Oklahoma did. Both Meg and Will were charged with cultivation of marijuana. Will was also charged with possession with intent to distribute. He was offered a plea bargain of 10 years, Meg 5. They refused.
Somebody had to be here to raise these kids. And if he took the deal and he went in and I went in, then where did they end up with? Foster homes?
Will also knew if he pleaded guilty, he'd forfeit his right to appeal. So prosecutors offered another deal. Will would get his day in court. Meg would get a 1-year deferred sentence for possession. But in exchange, Meg would have to testify against the man she loved.
It was really hard. He was crying too. I would rather have done anything else, but I couldn't.
So she says the state squeezed her to get him. In the end, Meg took the stand, and she testified about Will's growing pot, and also told the jury she and his friends smoked with him.
If you're seriously ill, and you're looking at this as medication, what are you doing taking it with friends and with Meg?
That was their choice. I didn't, a lot of times they had their own marijuana. 90% of the time I smoked marijuana by myself.
On January 16, 1997, 12 citizens of Tulsa not only found Will guilty, they also determined his punishment. Oklahoma is one of the few states where juries both convict and sentence. And it has one of the toughest drug laws in the nation.
I knew he was going to serve some time. It's Oklahoma, after all. I wasn't prepared for what he got.
What he got was 93 years. The jury gave him 70 years for cultivation of marijuana, 20 more for possession in the presence of a child, another 3 years for other related charges. When the verdict was read, Foster looked at his wife.
It looked like somebody ripped her heart out. I mean, she's very pale, on the verge of hysteria.
93 years. For pot. That's overkill to me. I mean, he didn't kill anybody. That's a death sentence.
A travesty of justice, cried Foster's outraged supporters. One even created a website for the Foster story. A story that has made it all the way to Capitol Hill.
They cited Will Foster, a 30-year-old father of 3.
Last year, Foster's case came before a congressional hearing on legalizing medicinal marijuana. Foster was held up as a victim of unfair drug laws, laws which punish patients who are already suffering.
The war on drugs, as I said, is an unmitigated disaster.
As doctors, legislators, and even the Office of the Drug Czar consider this issue, Foster's case was brought front and center to the debate. He is presented as a prisoner of war, the war on drugs. But is Will Foster really the victim he claims to be? There is more to the Will Foster story that even his supporters don't know.
And nobody else knew about it. So when you look at case scenarios like this, it's like you're taking away medical issues. But how could the jury ignore what was going on? And why, and who would suggest marijuana in the first place when the doctors in Oklahoma knew that it was illegal? How would they even know? When we come back, the full story of Will Foster and the other side from one detective who knew about it and what Will Foster got in trouble for before this case. Stay with us. Return now to our story. Will Foster has just been sentenced to nearly a century in prison for growing marijuana in his backyard. He says that he did nothing wrong, that he needed the pot to ease the pain. But as you're about to see, there's more to him than meets the eye. Who would suggest marijuana in the first place? And you'll also hear from the detective who tells a different story. Once again, here's Rob Stafford.
Will Foster's life behind bars has made him a symbol of the injustice of drug laws. While his website rallies supporters, we wondered if there was more to the Will Foster story. To hear him tell it, he's been victimized twice. First by a crippling condition, then by a system that locked him away for growing marijuana to treat his pain.
I know the pain that I felt. I know how I felt off my prescription drugs. I know how I felt off marijuana. If it made me feel better, then I should be able to do it.
Foster says rheumatoid arthritis causes him to limp, has formed knots in his hands, curled his fingers, and swelled his feet. So how could a jury ignore that? While there is no medical exception for marijuana use in Oklahoma, jurors could have considered that fact as a mitigating circumstance. But we learned Foster never gave them the opportunity.
The reason you were growing that marijuana was because of your medical problems.
That's correct.
How many doctors did you call to testify during your trial?
I didn't call any.
And you think the jury's going to buy that without hearing from a doctor?
That wasn't my decision. I hired an attorney to put on my case, and I wanted to bring in a doctor, and he thought it was best not.
Will Foster was not prescribed the marijuana, wasn't told to use the marijuana by a healthcare practitioner.
Stuart Sutherland was Foster's attorney. He says at that time, there was no doctor treating Foster for arthritis. No doctor treating him who could testify that he needed marijuana for pain. The jury only heard this from Meg. Even in states which permit marijuana for medical use, it has to be under doctor's orders. Orders Foster never received.
He simply discovered that alleviated the effects of his arthritis.
So who suggested marijuana in the first place? Foster told us it was a chiropractor who believed in natural healing. But he advised marijuana for back pain, not arthritis. And how do we know Foster even has rheumatoid arthritis? Well, he gave us the names of 2 doctors. One wouldn't talk to us without Foster's written permission. Permission Foster refused to give. The other said she only saw Foster once after his conviction. And though she believes he has the condition, she says that diagnosis needs to be confirmed by a specialist. You're not even sure if you had a firm diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis before the bust in December of '95.
That is correct.
Yet, on your own, you go out and start growing marijuana to treat it.
That's correct. I was in a lot of pain, a lot of swelling in my feet, hurt to walk.
A humane plea Foster also could have made to the jury. Perhaps if they'd heard it, he wouldn't be in prison for 93 years. But just as no doctors testified, neither did Foster.
Why? Because I had a prior, and my lawyers didn't think that it would be best for me to testify.
A prior conviction? Remember what Will told us earlier?
Had you ever been in trouble before?
No.
Never.
No.
What was the prior for?
Obtaining a controlled substance by fraud.
So you had a drug conviction in your past?
Yes. My former employer got addicted to Demerol, and I had went with him to file a prescription. I didn't realize that he was fraudulently doing these prescriptions.
But we discovered a different story.
Your name was on the prescription.
I don't know about that. I never seen the prescriptions.
According to court records, Foster's name was on 5 prescriptions. He pleaded guilty and received a 2-year suspended sentence. But again, we found there was more to his past.
Were you ever busted for marijuana?
Yes, one time. Back in '87.
New Mexico.
That's correct.
The first charge was possession with intent to distribute. It was dropped to simple possession, a misdemeanor. Foster was hoping for the same conviction this time, but testimony the jury did hear convinced them otherwise.
A man that knew what he was doing.
J.J. Gray is the detective who busted Foster. Because he works undercover, we agreed not to show his face.
Had you ever seen anything like it before?
No, sir. That was my first actual indoor grow I'd ever seen.
An indoor grow. Right beside the kitchen, police discovered stairs leading to what was once a bomb shelter. Down those stairs, they found Will Foster's secret garden.
Did this look like the operation of just a man who was growing pot for himself only?
No, sir.
What did it look like?
A man who was growing marijuana and distributing it or selling it.
Police counted 76 plants. It was a hydroponic garden, marijuana cultivated without soil. Special growing solutions and artificial lights nourish the plants, which are rooted in gravel or sponges.
This was the largest cultivation case that Tulsa County has seen, and had seen up to that point. We still haven't had one like that.
Paul Wilkening and Brian Crane prosecuted Will Foster.
Will Foster says it was all for personal use.
Will Foster couldn't have used this much marijuana in his entire life.
Not only was pot growing in the basement, police say they found almost 3 pounds of dried marijuana, some of it bagged, upstairs in the bedrooms, in Tupperware under the bed, on the floor near the computer, on a sweater rack in the closet not far from digital scales and baggies. All evidence, investigators say, of dealing. And what concerned them even more was they found that pot right next to Meg's daughter's bedroom.
How could you do that with kids in the house?
When they don't see it, you're not flaunting it, they don't know it's there. We're talking about a bomb shelter of 10 by 10 feet with a corrugated steel door set into the floor and a lock on it.
The Fosters insist all their pot was locked away from the children at all times. And it was the police who placed the marijuana in areas near the child's bedroom to add the charge of possession in the presence of a minor.
I mean, I wouldn't leave a big blue tub of marijuana laying in the floor. I mean, let's be real. They bagged marijuana up for me. Said I had 11 bags of marijuana. I never had 11 bags of marijuana.
Police say Foster's accusation is ridiculous. A convicted man's last attempt to get out of jail. And prosecutors say they didn't need the additional charge. The amount of pot found in the house and the size of his garden was plenty of evidence to convict.
Well, it's not really that much marijuana.
While it might look like there was lots of pot growing, Foster called an expert witness, a columnist for High Times magazine, who told the jury the yield from the entire garden would be one man's supply, about 3 pounds a year. But the police calculations were different. Their estimate? Just one plant would produce about 2 pounds of marijuana. As for the dried marijuana, Foster says only 1.5 ounces was smokable. The rest was roots and stems.
I don't know what the smokable portion of marijuana plant is. And the law in Oklahoma doesn't differentiate between the leaf, the stalk, the branch. Marijuana is marijuana in Oklahoma.
But if only an ounce and a half was smokable, he may have been using it just for medicinal purposes.
That might have been, but I don't necessarily buy into the fact that Will Foster was that sick. Will Foster was sick when it became convenient for him to be sick, i.e. his defense in this case.
He wouldn't want to walk on these feet.
Whether you believe Foster smoked marijuana for pain or for pleasure, whether he has arthritis or not, does Foster really deserve a 93-year sentence? Does the punishment fit the crime?
Will Foster received a 93-year sentence. There are killers, rapists, child molesters serving a lot less time.
Right. And I've prosecuted killers, rapists, and child molesters and gotten less than 92 years. Will Foster had an option to take a plea negotiation. He did not. So we went to trial. Will Foster has 93 years because Will Foster asked for 93 years.
Is that fair? Because he didn't take the deal that you offered him.
At some point, the games have to end. We enter into plea negotiations the day of trial.
And Foster might have been out in 4 years, but instead he went to trial, he says, to preserve his right to appeal. Prosecutor Brian Crane says, by doing so, Foster placed his fate in the hands of his peers.
The judge did not set punishment. The state did not set punishment. 12 people who were citizens of Tulsa County made the determination that that kind of activity by Will Foster was not going to be tolerated.
The jury threw the book at Foster, but just last month an appeals court wrote another chapter. This sentence shocks our conscience, the judges said, and reduced his term from 93 years to 20. And thanks to a recent change in state law, he is now eligible for parole. If Foster leaves prison, will he smoke marijuana again? We're not sure he ever quit.
Pot can be got here in prison. So you smoked a couple of joints today before this interview?
Not today.
Are you still smoking pot here in prison?
I'd rather not answer that question.
Pleading the fifth here?
Pleading the fifth. But you can get marijuana. You can get any drug you want here.
Drugs in prison is strictly prohibited. But this story should even raise more common sense. As I told you before, you saw my reaction. I didn't even show you the whole story till tonight. But we need to understand here. If he had asked, if he went against his attorney, called the doctors in and say, hey, I'm on trial here. I could be sentenced to 93 years. Get your ass over here. Get your ass over here and help me out. You have my file. Get your ass over here. Come in, show the jury, and then me scratching heads going, well, what do I do now? What do we do? Blood, sweat and tears going on. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Then he would have gotten his sentence reduced. He would have taken the plea bargain. I mean, remember, his wife testified. But Will's like, nope, I'll take the century in prison. And he hired an attorney. But we gotta look at marijuana. Look, every state that you live in, they have laws legalizing and illegalizing marijuana. Legally by state. Kansas, Wyoming, Idaho, South Carolina, 4 states, really illegal. CBD with THC only. Those has mixed. Decriminalized? No. Alaska, it's fully legal. It's fully legal to smoke. Other states, it's good. America has 50 states, but the green areas is like for medical purposes. California, all states, especially Oklahoma, South Dakota, North Dakota. Yes, in Oklahoma, medicinal mix. Yes, decriminalized. No. So now we know. Now we know. Coming up, zero tolerance policies and pornography in our schools. 11-year-old boys were arrested for looking at porn. Stay with us. This has got to be one of my favorite stories ever to talk about throughout the 7 years of this broadcast. 2 11-year-old boys at a school in a different state were arrested. You may be, you might be guessing like they may be arrested for spraying graffiti. Nope. You might be guessing maybe arrested for throwing some rocks at cars. Nope. Vandalism? Nope. Talking back to parents? Nope. Raping? You're close. Time's up. They were arrested. You ready for this? They were arrested in school they were arrested for looking at porn in school. In school. 2 11-year-old boys. Take a look.
11-year-old boys were viewing porn on a school computer. They now face criminal charges.
All right, so here's how it breaks down. They're in 5th grade, right? It's in Utah.
It's in Utah.
The computers are set up in a way that they block all the stuff.
Yeah, they have internet filters.
But the guys broke through. The kids are clever, and they typed in the word lesbian.
They typed in the word lesbian, and apparently images popped up. And what they did on several different occasions is they showed that lesbian image to their friends, right?
As any good friend would.
Right, and what ended up happening is one of their friends went and told their parents, another friend went and told the principal. Yeah. So these 2 boys get caught.
All right, so the principal says, I'm going to suspend you. I'm on board for that. Look, I don't mind, and this is the most, kid thing you've ever done in your life, right? But you're supposed to have consequences for doing kid things, right? And if the principal suspends you for looking at porn in the class, that makes perfect sense, right? But then they call the cops. And they're going to do a criminal complaint against these kids for showing porn to underage kids. But they're underage. They're 11. Do you know how many of my friends would have been arrested if we all got arrested for showing porn to one another when we were underage? Every single one of us.
Right.
Okay? They'd have been like, it's go time! Go, go, go! And they bust down the doors, and it turns out we're all showing porn to one another. You know why we did that? Because we were kids. And we were like, oh my God, that's what it looks like? Right? I mean, come on. Arresting kids for that?
Right.
God, that is unbelievable. No, but the reason I get so angry at this, and this is the story that made me really angry today, it's because we've lost sense of touch with all common sense. Like, it's just flown out the window. I mean, kids can't be kids anymore. What are 11, 12, 13-year-old kids going to do? They're going to try to find porn. They're going to type in lesbian on a computer. And everybody's head explodes. And by the way, you know what happened when those kids looked at lesbians? Not a damn thing. What happened? They all of a sudden became perverts or something? Oh my God, I can't believe it. If my 11-year-old kid, and I know that's young, right? But if he's not trying to bust onto a computer to see lesbians, I'm going to have issues. I'm going to be like, come on, son. I mean, of course not, right? That's too young, la, 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 right? But that being said, on a serious note, if I caught him doing that, I'd be like, all right, son, your mom tells me that it's not the right way to go.
Your mom tells me.
Okay, and I can't have it. But I know I did the same thing when I was 11.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so secretly I'd be thinking, way to figure it out, man. You broke the freaking code. By the way, how hard was it to break that code? The code? Type in lesbian, you get lesbian. It's a great firewall.
Right, great internet filter.
Yeah.
And it's funny because one of the parents was like, the mother of one of these boys was like, well, how did my son even have the ability to access that on a school computer, right? And they're like, oh, all these porn sites, they're constantly changing their URLs, and they're being sneaky and finding ways to make it easy for people to find this porn, right? And it's like, it's so stupid. Like, okay, yeah, blame the porn sites. But whatever. Like you said, I don't think it's a big deal. Boys look up porn all the time. It's one thing to punish them and suspend them and, slap them on the wrist and talk to them about it. But it's another thing to send them to a juvenile detention center, which is what they're planning on doing.
And by the way, they're saying, and they'll get some counseling and something. And what are you going to get counseling for? That your kid going through puberty and you're interested in sex, you're going to, counsel them out of that?
Right.
What? Seriously, what the hell are you supposed to do in counseling? All right, little Peter, I don't want you to think about your little Peter, okay? You're having bad thoughts about lesbians, and we need to counsel you out of that. This country is we become so. In some ways, we go crazy, right? And there's sex flowing out of everywhere. In other ways, we're still so damn prudish, and we want to put these kids in a bubble and protect them from anything that is adult-like, and make sure they never grow up. And it's crazy. I'm not in favor of the kids looking at porn, but I'm not going to send them to counseling or to the cops.
Right.
It's absolutely crazy.
I think he raised common sense. We don't need to suspend children for looking at pornography. We really don't. No one even understands. Even no one does. Here's one of my other favorite stories. Going back to zero tolerance. Because it absolutely just makes zero sense. We talked about it years ago on our Back to School month, and it's a great issue for Throwback Thursday. Take a look.
Zachary Christie's story. He's a 6-year-old from Delaware. He basically took a pocket knife to school. It's a utensil, a camping utensil that could be used as a knife, a fork, and a spoon. Okay? So he took this utensil to school, and when school officials saw it, they decided to take action against him. Okay? They have, of course, schools have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to weapons, especially after all the school shootings and everything. So because of this, he now faces 45 days in the district's reform school.
Reform school. I don't know what that's like, but that doesn't sound good. Oh, well, look at this guy. No wonder. He totally deserves it. This guy looks like a thug. Straight up. Okay? I mean, this guy's going to cut everybody up in that school.
Look, here's the thing, okay? I don't agree with the zero tolerance policy. I think it's ridiculous, right? You have to have some judgment on a case-by-case basis, okay?
Yes.
That being said, you can't bring a knife to school. I mean, I don't think that he should spend 45 days in a reform school. I don't think he should spend any time in a reform school. But there definitely needs to be some consequences so the 6-year-old understands that it's not okay to bring a knife to school. Even if he does it, even if he brings it without the intention of hurting someone else, he could accidentally hurt someone else. Or someone else can accidentally use that and hurt other students. So, yeah, he needs to know that it's wrong. The problem that I have with this story is, his mother and everybody is saying, oh, you know, this kid did nothing wrong. It's all about, you know, these school policies are wrong. So this little 6-year-old boy is walking around thinking, yeah, bringing knives to school is okay. It's not me that did something wrong. It's the stupid school with their stupid policies that are doing something wrong.
Here comes the hanging judge again. That's unbelievable. All right, now look, other parts of the story are that a girl whose grandmother sent in a birthday cake, sent it in with a knife to cut the cake. Then this is my favorite part of the story. They cut the cake and eat it, and afterwards the teacher tells the principal, and then they suspend the student.
Yeah, and that see,
No, you don't get to eat your cake and have it too. Okay, right. That's not right.
And that particular story, I 100% disagree with. And like I said...
But it's zero tolerance. Zero tolerance is zero tolerance.
I said in the beginning that I don't agree with the zero tolerance policy. However, students need to be aware that they shouldn't be allowed to bring guns as well, but knives,
yes, that I agree with.
Or any type of weapon to school.
But you see, that's an excellent point right there, because with a gun, it's fairly unambiguous. Like if you bring a gun to school, it's not like you were going to cut the cake with the gun. Right? Well, I was going to shoot it a couple of times and stuff. And or I thought this was a cool thing I found in Boy Scouts. No guns. Right? That's obvious. But there's 100 different things that a knife could be used for, like cutting food. Right? So that's where the problem comes in. And the problem comes in when they get expansive. We did another story where they say no weapons, and they suspended a girl who had a Tweety chain. Like, hey, it's a chain, chain's a weapon, you're gone.
I know, and that's usually what happens when the country experiences some sort of crisis, right? All these school shootings happen, and of course the response is to over-exaggerate.
Look, let's get reasonable here. First of all, zero tolerance has a good and a bad reason behind it, okay? The good reason behind it is when they let people use judgment, they usually screw it up. And what they realized is that it gets applied, the policy against bringing quote-unquote weapons to school gets applied to minority students at disproportionate rates than white students. But it's not a little disproportionate, it's grossly disproportionate. Like in some cases, 2 to 3 times as much applied to minority students. Then you go, oh, okay, yeah, I see what the problem is, right? But the bad side of doing zero tolerance is you can't remove human judgment from things. And if you do, it's kind of partly being lazy. It's taking a shortcut. Instead of fixing the problem, and even if it's discrimination, then the problem is discrimination. And how you apply it, you should recognize it, and that's actually probably just only one indication of a larger problem you have. And address that problem. Burying it and then, and going over it just by calling zero tolerance, all right, then we won't use our mind at all, and we'll just ban everybody. Oh, that pen is kind of sharp. That's a weapon. You're all suspended. I mean, this can get ridiculous. No, that's why we have the capacity for judgment, and we should have administrators who can, put that into effect. So for this kid, look, obviously he shouldn't have brought it in. He got overzealous, but it's not a real knife. I mean, it's part of this camping thing, and we understand what the story is. Okay, teach him a lesson. You know what? You're suspended for it. You know what?
No, not even
2
that.
days.
Not even that. I don't
Okay,
think the kid should even get suspended, because you get suspended. I mean, he's a 6-year-old, so it doesn't matter. But
It doesn't matter at all.
Suspension
That sends
is
the
still,
message perfectly fine.
I don't think suspension is a good disciplinary action, because you don't want to send kids out of school. You want them to get an education. Give them detention after school.
Look, if you said to me as a kid, what do you want? 2 days of suspension or 45 days of reform school? Like, suspension.
No. I understand
Okay.
that. I understand
And that's
that.
part of the problem you're saying.
Yes, that is part of the problem. So instead, after class is over, he should spend more time in school in detention, and that's something that he's going to hate, but it works well in 2 different ways. I mean,
All right, you know what? We're going to have a deal here. We're going to work this out. A week of detention.
yeah, I think that's great.
Okay,
Because,
deal?
yeah, deal.
Okay. 45 days in reform school. God knows what's going to happen. I don't know how bad a reform school is, but it doesn't sound pleasant. Okay? So,
Yeah, this is something. What happened to conversation and understanding? Oh, so little Johnny. I don't know why that's always the name.
in this case, it's Zachary.
Yeah,
little Zachary.
Little shit. You got a knife on this pocket thing that you brought in because you're trying to show off because you're happy about Boy Scouts. You can't bring that to school. You know this will hurt somebody. Take it home, don't bring it back anymore. Isn't that the end of the discussion? I don't understand the detention, the suspension, or any of that stuff. Because I feel like detention should be for people who consciously are out to cause harm at school, and then they're going to learn their lesson and go, damn, I'm going to think twice before I do that messed up thing again, because then I'm going to get detention. He wasn't thinking. He wasn't going, I'm going to fuck somebody up.
Fuck somebody up. He's Zachary. He's 6. Anyway, no, I hear you, JR. But and that goes to the problem with these zero tolerance policies, which is that it's usually because people are lazy and scared, okay? And because if they don't take drastic action and then later something happens in that school, then they're going to get fired. And they don't want to get fired. That's 90% of the reason why anybody does anything at any job. They don't want to get fired. And that's why they have these. And that's why I don't like zero tolerance policies. In fact, I'm declaring right now, I have zero tolerance for zero tolerance policies. Think about it.
Zero tolerance for zero tolerance policies. And even then...
Look, I need everybody to go now.
Wow. Even then. When we return, America's Most Wanted, or just minor behavior that could be easily handled by a parent. A story that's worth repeating for this Thursday. Stay with us. Look, I've dealt with school stories about a lot of disciplinary issues, disruptions in our classroom, but I'm all in favor of giving kids detention or in-school suspension, but I'm not in favor of very minor behavior of arresting kids for very minor behavior that could have easily been handled by a parent. I'm all for detention, but I'm not all for suspension. Even for carrying a weapon. You don't freaking take him to jail. Put him in detention. Don't put him in a reform school. But can you ever imagine watching America's Most Wanted Classroom Edition and seeing all these crimes? And you're thinking to yourself, are those are just minor behaviors that could have been easily handled by us parents. Burping, doodling, throwing a tantrum. Those are crimes that got kids handcuffed by police. As you're about to see, look, we all want law and order in our classrooms, but at what a cost? Here's Chris Cuomo.
Bad things can happen at school. Guns, drugs, bullying. And as you can see in all those videos on the internet, classrooms run amok.
Stand up and sit down.
So it is for good reason that more and more police are on the beat in hallways and classrooms across the country. But in this climate of controlling behavior, have we gone too far? Case in point, the Texas girl's in the news right now for getting spanked.
After she got caught helping another student cheat, Taylor got a paddle to the backside.
Too hard, their mothers say, by a male vice principal.
Giving her a swat behind closed doors? That is creepy.
Yep, spanking, still legal in schools in 19 states. The 9-year-old in Gastonia, North Carolina, suspended for sexual harassment because, get this, he was overheard telling a friend,
I said Miss Taylor was cute.
his teacher was cute. The school later apologized and forced the principal to retire. And this video stunned the nation in 2005. Remember the 5-year-old girl handcuffed by St. Petersburg, Florida police for throwing a tantrum in preschool? How can this be? Advocates say the combination of cops and kids in the classroom is having all kinds of unintended consequences. Some of them so ridiculous, you literally can't make this stuff up.
Your daughter's school decided to have her arrested?
When she was just 12 years old, Alexa was arrested in her New York City middle school, searched, handcuffed, taken away by 4 of New York's finest.
Had you ever been in a police station?
No.
Had you ever been arrested?
No.
Alexa's now 15, but remembers her crime like it was yesterday. Doodling on a desk. With an erasable marker, no less.
So you wrote on the desk. It's not like pulling a knife on somebody, but you're not supposed to write on the desk, true?
Yes.
Are you a graffiti artist?
No.
Did you used to spray paint right all over the walls in school?
Never.
Were you known as that?
No.
Alexa, like some funny tag name that you had that you used?
No.
Alexa had the very bad luck to be attending a school with a zero tolerance for graffiti, and, as her mother would tell you, a similar score in common sense. She says the school officers search her, make her take off some of her clothes. Then, they don't just call her mother, Maraima Camacho. They call the cops from the precinct across the street.
When I saw the police officer go for the handcuffs, and I said, you gotta be kidding me.
So they arrest your daughter, they put her in handcuffs. Like a thug.
Right. And she was not resisting arrest.
Turned me over and hands behind my back.
And you got handcuffed?
Metal handcuffs.
At 12?
Yes.
For doodling on a desk?
Erasable marker.
She was crying. She was so scared.
Maybe you find it hard to understand how a little girl gets arrested for writing on a desk. After all, it's not like she perpetrated some heinous crime, something really inexcusable like illegal burping.
I burped and I said, excuse me. She said to quit talking, I'm disrupting.
Francisco Montano is 15 now, plays baseball. He's a slugger. But 2 years ago, when he was 13 in the 7th grade at Cleveland Middle School in Albuquerque, New Mexico, he says he got busted for burping. The school and the police say it was more than that. He was disrupting the class and refused to obey the teacher. And for that, he got arrested.
Officer came up to me. He said because I was disrupting the educational process, he handcuffed me and he drove me to the detention center.
Then the detention center called his mother, Annette Montano.
And he said our son was arrested and detained for belching in class. I said, are you seriously telling me he's in jail for burping? And he said, that's what it looks like to me now.
Francisco was never prosecuted. Instead, he's now suing the school and the police. The Albuquerque police say they only make arrests if the disruption is so bad the teacher can't teach and students can't learn. America's Most Wanted? They are not, says civil rights advocate Judith Brown Deannis.
It is ridiculous. It is extreme discipline. We have gone over the top with this, and instead of teaching children the right behaviors, instead of nurturing them, we're hauling them off in handcuffs.
Francisco Negron is with the National School Boards Association.
I don't think there's a public school to prison pipeline, and I certainly don't think that the presence of school resource officers is in some way contributing to that.
We know there are some bad things going on in our schools. There's gang activity, heavy drug activity, bullying in the extreme where the violence is real, and maybe you have to make sure that those kids get pulled out of the
But that's not
mainstream.
what we're talking about. Everyone wants safety in the schools. We want discipline in our schools, but we don't need to see our children put into the juvenile justice system for very minor behavior that could have been handled by a parent.
An Education Department Civil Rights survey earlier this year shows nearly 100,000 kids arrested in schools. In New York, Alexa, our doodler, fought back. She sued the city.
This is not about the money. We don't want this to happen again to any other child.
While admitting no wrongdoing, the city paid Alexa a 6-figure settlement. The criminal charges were dropped, and the case is sealed. But that arrest is still on Alexa's record.
She has an arrest record.
Her attorney, Joseph Rosenthal, says the school's wrong will haunt Alexa for years to come.
For the rest of her life, she has to say, yes, I was arrested.
And yes, she was. I'll have a final thought about this when we come back with some common sense. Don't go away. Look, there comes a time to when you want to deal with a misbehaving student. Putting them in handcuffs is just going too far with zero tolerance. When I was in school, we had a thing, we didn't have out of school suspension. We had a thing called SDGC, Student Discipline Guidance Center. It was just a little portable building across the street, right by Domino's. It was to where you had to wear a white t-shirt and pants and closed-toed shoes. There you would do work, or I don't know what else would happen. I mean, you would probably do your assignments or something else. I mean, it's just a little portable building right across the street from the school, and that's how it is. I mean, reform school. I mean, with kids and weapons, detention's better. Don't make detention. They'll learn. You put a child in, detention's better than just getting out the cops and arresting them. For pornography, we can suspend the child and not take them to jail. Burping, doodling, throwing a tantrum. Those are things that can be handled by a parent. The biggest one, I mean, think about this. It's like, if you're not going to calm down, I'm going to call your mom. I mean, we're going to deal with that issue. Like, I mean, I've heard teachers tell kids, "Hey, if you're gonna misbehave, if you ever do that again, I'm gonna call your mom." This is what be happening. One person be like, "I don't care," and other people like, "Please don't call my mom. Please don't call my mom." It's just how it is. I'll tell you the reason about it on Friday. The thing we have to understand is this: we're causing a lot of chaos in this country. How are we doing so? By overreacting and making more laws. You can pass all the laws you want until you start putting people in jail. You want it to change, you put them in jail. I mean, you want laws passed, you gotta create a situation. I mean, think about James Nichols, who was the suspect in that Oklahoma City bombing. Even before Timothy McVeigh and James's brother, Terry Nichols. I mean, Timothy McVeigh would like to talk about the Randy Weaver case and the Waco incident. I mean, did we really blame the government for? I mean, this is what happened. The government wouldn't even shoot innocent unarmed woman, Randy Weaver's wife. Would they burn innocent people in Waco? Did Bill Clinton get on the phone with Jeremy and say, "Hey, blow up this building so we get the law passed"? It's all a bunch of terrorists. It's how it is. It's terrorism. What happened to talking to your children? Instead of teaching children, nurturing them, you're holding them off in freaking handcuffs. The only time you can arrest a child is if the school decides to press charges. Albuquerque needs to start changing its policy to where they don't arrest kids for disrupting the classroom. or taking them to juvie. We want discipline. Here's the thing. We want discipline. We want safety. We don't need to see our children being put into the juvenile justice system for minor behavior that could be easily handled by a parent. Handled by a parent. We don't want any of that happening. Of course, we want law and order. We want officers in our schools. We don't need to see people being arrested for dumb things. I really don't want to let that happen, but if it did, I wouldn't even be here talking about this. So it shows you. Police are on a beat in hallways and in the classrooms. But are we going too far with this? We're probably not going too far because we want safety and the use of school resource officers. But schools are now creating their own police departments thanks to some money. Here in Fire Bluff, we have our own police department, like CCISD is doing. Other school districts may have the option. I mean, after all these school shootings, every school district in Texas is deciding to create its own police department, like what CCISD is doing. And on our next Throwback Thursday, I'm going to play you back a clip from that episode from back in May of 2019, which coming up next month is going to be 5 years since that incident. It was all started. I mean, everyone's like asking, is this going to raise your taxes? This has nothing to do with the tax rate. I even audio recorded the conversation for the show. And believe me, I knew about it. I had notes taken, and I was proud to be, and if I had a camera, if I had filmed this incident, then it would be a Give Me Break first. So what does that tell you? I damn well do my homework. Every day. When I do a show, I do my homework. I look at a story, and even then, when I look at stories, I imagine putting myself in their shoes. Just like in the case what you're about to see coming up on tomorrow's Give Me a Break. Coming up on Give Me a Break Friday, it's a Court TV network exclusive. All about murder and telling whose is who. Here's a preview.
Tonight, on an all-new Dateline, she was a dedicated cop, a beloved sister, now dead.
Part of us was killed when Lois was killed.
Murder in cold blood. Her killer, this man. He and his girlfriend had just robbed a bank. Surrounded, he refused to surrender. He didn't give himself up, and he didn't make it out alive, leaving his girlfriend to face police and a charge of murder. Was she as guilty as he was?
I'm not a murderer.
Though she didn't pull the trigger, she helped him rob the bank, had even posed with the murder weapon. But she insisted all along she didn't have a choice.
He was gonna kill me.
She says she never wanted any of it to happen.
And he's just looking at me like, why?
Tonight, a Dateline Court TV network exclusive. Was she just a helpless young woman controlled by a violent man? Or a heartless killer trying to get away with murder? Has the jury reached a verdict? What would the jury decide? Keith Morrison looked at both sides of a deadly alliance.
That's on Friday. I know I promised you the runaway train full of beans. We're going to have that for you coming up next week. But don't worry, we are still continuing our survival series. We're going to have the railroad incident. We're going to have the skyscraper incident. The buried alive story. And I think that will cover it. Even the bus bomb. What's that for you? That's it for Throwback Thursday. We'll see you again for Game Break Friday with Deadly Alliance, along with a little game. Along with the game, we can tell which one's real, which is fake. Like, is it real kick? I'll see you next time.